Welcome to this brief tutorial on evaluating sources. As a researcher, you will need to sometimes access resources on the internet. Since no one is monitoring the internet for false, misleading, or outdated information, it is up to you, as a researcher, to evaluate the information you find. When you evaluate information, you should consider several criteria: authority, accuracy, purpose, relevance, and timeliness. Let's first look at authority. When determining authority, you will need to ask yourself, what expertise does the author have? There are a few points to consider. You will need to look at the author's credentials and consider what makes him an expert. For example, what type of authority does the author have? Does he have subject or credential expertise? Is he someone who has a degree in that particular subject or has worked in the field for an extended period of time? Also, consider what organization or university he is affiliated with. Does he have societal expertise? Is he someone who holds a public office, such as a congressman or governor? Does he have special experience? Is he someone who has participated in an event like an astronaut who has walked on the moon, or has a life-altering condition like someone who is visually impaired and has a unique experience of living in a visually stimulated world? An example of a source authored by someone who has authority is when you are researching the topic of climate change and find a scholarly article written by a university professor who has his PhD in environmental science and 30 years of experience studying the effects of climate change. Researching the authority of a source is one of the most important ways to evaluate a source. When evaluating accuracy, think about if the information presented in the source is correct, and if the information is consistent with other relevant sources. Investigate to see if there is a consensus in the information across different sources. If it is an original study, look for evidence that it can be duplicated or corroborated to confirm that the information is accurate. If the source is citing other sources, look at the original sources to make sure they are being represented correctly. Ask yourself these questions when evaluating a source for accuracy. Does the source provide supporting evidence, and do the authors link to or cite that evidence? Does the information stay the same across different sources, such as books and articles? Is the information well organized and clearly cited? Here is an example of how to evaluate for accuracy. You are researching the topic of deforestation and come across a book on the topic. The book mentions a research article that discusses the effects of deforestation on Earth's atmosphere. When you find and open the article, you can see that it is well organized and contains in-text citations and a list of formal references at the end of the article. This would be considered a source that contains accuracy. The information is consistent across different sources, it is well organized, and clearly cited. To evaluate the purpose of a source, think about why the source was written. Is the purpose of the source to persuade or inform? When using resources from the internet, make sure to check for bias. Anyone can write and publish anything on the internet, so it is important to check to see if the information is based on fact, opinion, or propaganda. Consider what motivations the author might have had and how the information is presented. Biased information is not automatically void, but you should be aware of an existing bias and seek out information that provides a balanced viewpoint. Also, if you decide to use biased information, be sure to let your reader know that the bias exists. After reading the source, how does it make you feel? Does it contain emotionally charged content, bias, or inaccurate information? What is the agenda of the company or organization? Look into the mission statement and goals of the source. This information can be found on their About page. Here is an example of how to evaluate a source by examining its purpose. You are researching the topic of vaccines and come across a website on the topic. As you read through the content, you realize it is based on the author's thoughts and opinions rather than research. As a researcher, you decide to investigate their About page to look further into their missions and goals. You discover the website belongs to an organization that is part of the anti-vaccination movement. Since the authors have a biased point of view and the content is based on opinion rather than research, This would not be an appropriate source you would want to use for a college research assignment on vaccinations. As a researcher, you will want to find resources based on research findings rather than opinion or propaganda. Also, make sure the source is clearly organized and includes in-text citations and a list of references. When determining the relevance of a source, think about if it adequately fits your research topic. Make sure the information is relevant to the subject, provides adequate coverage of the topic, and is at the appropriate academic level. What is the source of this source? Does it provide an overview or in-depth analysis of your topic? You are researching the topic of schizophrenia and come across a website on the topic. After investigating the author, you discover he is a high school student and the webpage was created for a class project. This would not be a relevant source to use for your college research paper because it will not adequately cover your topic or be at the appropriate academic level. As a college-level researcher, look for sources that cover your topic at a college level. Timeliness is the last element used to evaluate sources. When considering timeliness, think about if the information is current, updated, or obsolete. Consider when the author published the information. Timeliness can be important depending on the topic. Think about these questions when evaluating a source for timeliness. When was the source first published? When was the source last updated or modified? Are there any published reviews, responses, or rebuttals? Timeliness is important for some subjects more than it is for others. A book about World War II from 1986 might still be relevant, as long as no major revelations have shed light on the topic. However, a book on computers from 1986 is sure to be out of date, though it might be a good resource for a historical look at computers in the 1980s. As a researcher, you need to evaluate all sources you use for your research assignments by using these criteria. It is particularly important to carefully evaluate web resources because anyone can create a website and present themselves as an expert on the internet. Take time to evaluate these websites based on the criteria of authority, accuracy, purpose, relevance, and timeliness. Determine if you would or would not use the source for academic research and why. Thank you for watching this tutorial on how to evaluate sources. If you have any questions, please be sure to contact your librarian.